Evening, everyone. I know many of you already know me, but I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Bruce Johnson. In the summer of 1961, my mom sent me to the house of one of her friends to, so I thought, go play. It turns out that Mrs. Baird was a den mother, and I had just become a Cub Scout. I've been continuously registered and active in the Boy Scouts of America since then, and am now a 63-year scouting veteran. I've made thousands of scouting friendships all over the world since then, participated in dozens of national and international scouting events, served as a scoutmaster and skipper to hundreds of scouts, and most importantly, in my mind, got to do scouting with my two children. I've been active in Sea Scouts since 1978 and have served continuously on the National Sea Scout Committee since 1987. One of my proudest accomplishments was bringing Sea Scouting back to the National Scout Jamboree, serving as the contingent head for the 1989, 93, and 97 National Sea Scout exhibit. As part of that experience, I became acquainted with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, which I joined in 2000. Although the auxiliary and the Sea Scouts worked closely together at the Jamboree, there was no formal agreement to work together. It took 20 years to develop the 2018 agreement between the BSA and the auxiliary that greatly expanded the auxiliary support for the Sea Scouts. The agreement in turn redefined what the Coast Guard and the auxiliary were willing to do for all scouts. The following presentation focuses on the Coast Guard Auxiliary Sea Scout Initiative, which the Coast Guard refers to as AUXScout. I will also briefly talk about support that the auxiliary provides to other scout programs. This presentation will examine the purpose and organization of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We'll also explore the benefits of the Auxiliary Sea Scout Partnership. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary and the Sea Scouts have been working together for many years, going back to at least 1989 at the National Scout Jamboree. The first formal agreement to cooperate was signed in 2009. In subsequent years, the auxiliary and the Sea Scouts conducted many successful joint projects. Based on this success, as well as the Coast Guard's and auxiliaries' awareness that they need to encourage young people to consider Coast Guard careers, a second, more comprehensive agreement was signed in 2018, in which the auxiliary named the Sea Scouts as its official youth program. Let's have a look at who the Coast Guard Auxiliary is and how they relate to Sea Scouts. So what is the Coast Guard Auxiliary? The auxiliary is the volunteer side of the U.S. Coast Guard. There are nearly 800 local flotillas or units with about 20,000 members. It works hand in hand with the active duty Coast Guard. Activities include boater safety training, safety patrols, search and rescue, marine safety inspections, public awareness, and many, many others. A current major focus of the Coast Guard Auxiliary is paddlecraft safety. The auxiliary's primary mission is to promote and improve recreational boating safety. It provides trained crews and facilities to augment the Coast Guard and enhance safety and security of our ports, waterways, and coastal regions. There are several other missions like aids to navigation verification, marine safety, food service support, recruiting support, and administrative support. Because of the breadth of available missions, not all flotillas participate in everything. Each chooses a few missions that are relevant to their local communities and that interest their members. The most common focus areas are public education, teaching boater safety courses, vessel safety checks, and safety patrols. and I'm going to take a chance that this video is going to play correctly.
The Boy Scouts of America's Sea Scout program is now the official youth program of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Coast Guard's uniform volunteer component.
Forging new leaders in service to others, safe and responsible boating.
These are the noble objectives of this great alliance between two of the most widely recognized responsible seamanship organizations in the world.
We've come together to share details about this alliance because we consider the outcomes vital for our country, for safe and responsible boating, and for the future of the Sea Scouts and the Auxiliary.
We ask our leadership and all our members to collaborate and make this program successful. Here are just a few of the many benefits the Alliance offers us.
Sea Scouts, you will benefit from augmented Coast Guard Auxiliary seamanship, STEM, leadership, and vocational training. You and your leaders can participate in Coast Guard Auxiliary shoreside and underway training and activities, introducing you to the exciting world of the United States Coast Guard. You'll also have full access to the Coast Guard Auxiliary seamanship, vocational, and leadership development programs. And Sea Scouts at least 14 years old are welcome to apply for auxiliary membership. Auxiliary flotillas can charter Sea Scout ships or units, creating a natural pathway from Sea Scouts to auxiliary membership or enlistment in the Coast Guard. Even Sea Scout ships chartered to other groups can be supported by local auxiliary flotillas. Auxiliarists and Sea Scouts, you will serve side by side, blending experience, youth, leadership, STEM training, and potential. Sea Scouts may even find their career path in the Coast Guard or maritime industry. Together, our organizations will learn, grow, and improve boating safety throughout the nation, as we ourselves grow and enhance our seamanship and leadership skills. You'll hear much more in the coming months. We hope you're as excited as we are about this dynamic program that creates stronger leaders and superior seamanship today and tomorrow. Please watch for details as they emerge from your flotilla and ship leaders, and help us forge this exciting alliance that ensures excellence, fun, and safety on U.S. waterways, now and into the future.
Really love to update that video, but it's still a good introduction to what we're talking about. What should we be doing now to get involved with the Coast Guard Auxiliary? The agreement mandates several changes to how the auxiliary works with Sea Scouts. The most important changes are that auxiliary flotillas and divisions, the next organizational level above flotillas, can charter ships, but not troops, packs, and other scout units. Youth Sea Scouts can join the auxiliary at age 14, while all other youth must wait until 17. Sea Scouts and adult leaders who join have full access to training and qualifications available only internally to the auxiliary and the Coast Guard. Sea Scouts are the official youth program of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And as I mentioned earlier, the auxiliary refers to our partnership as AUXScout. Please note, though, that although the active duty Coast Guard fully supports this collaboration, it's an agreement with the auxiliary, and we have to work with them and through them to get the benefits of it. Auxiliaries currently teach Sea Scouts a broad range of seamanship topics. One of the opportunities is auxiliary boat crew training. Information about this is available on the seascout.org website at seascout.org/cgaux. Additionally, requirements for auxiliary boat crew and other auxiliary member training courses have been compared to Sea Scout advancement requirements, and where they're the same or similar, that information is available in a crosswalk document on Auxby Wiki. This makes it easy for auxiliary instructors to teach the Coast Guard's way of operating watercraft while helping Sea Scouts meet their rank requirements. Working with the auxiliary helps to build bridges and teamwork. Help the auxiliary promote their Sea Scout support mission. We also need to work with the auxiliary to promote recreational boating safety messages along with our partnership. We can do this at boat shows, booths at boating supply stores and boat ramps, Scout Council scout shows, and even OA conclaves. The Aux Scout Standard Operating Procedure, or SOP, authorizes every flotilla and division to charter one Sea Scout ship each. If every auxiliary flotilla organized a ship, we would have over 800 new Sea Scout ships. That would more than triple our current membership. As you might imagine, some auxiliarists are worried about working with Sea Scouts, and that they think that it might mean babysitting immature Cub Scout age children, but that's not who Sea Scouts are. It's very important that we show auxiliary flotillas and divisions that we work with older teenagers who are mostly the best and brightest kids in the neighborhood, who take responsibility for their actions and aren't scared off by hard work or wearing uniforms. The auxiliary is understandably interested in presenting themselves to our Sea Scouts, their parents, and our adult leaders. Although there will be time commitment trade-off, the auxiliary is offering opportunities that are difficult to find anywhere else. As of August 2024, there are 34 auxiliary chartered Sea Scout ships with another 20 in development. What does the Coast Guard want to achieve from this partnership? Since the Coast Guard has not developed its own homegrown youth program, they see the Sea Scouts as an important avenue for generating interest and support for the service. Their goals include encouraging Sea Scouts to consider Coast Guard or maritime service careers. They would like to see Sea Scouts, their parents, and their leaders consider dual registering with the Coast Guard Auxiliary. This is very important to the auxiliary, which needs help getting its recreational boating safety message out to teens and young adults. Finally, it's important to the Coast Guard to identify communities of interest that will provide local support to Coast Guard missions. So what's in it for the auxiliary? The auxiliary has been looking for a way to train younger boaters at a time when they're most teachable, which is to say, before they have a lifetime of experience doing it the wrong way. The auxiliary is very interested in identifying young adults who share their commitment to community service and service to the nation, and they want to cultivate that civic engagement. The auxiliary also wants to build positive relationships with like-minded young adults and their parents, with the expectation that they'll become close allies to the Coast Guard and auxiliary. And of course, the auxiliary is hoping that some Sea Scouts, their parents, and their leaders will want to join the auxiliary. The flip side to this question is, what are the Sea Scouts getting out of working with the auxiliary? For Sea Scouts, this partnership provides additional expert resources to help with rank advancement. It gives them firsthand exposure to the Coast Guard, and this may help them to decide whether maritime careers are for them. Additionally, working with the Coast Guard will be a valuable addition to their Coast Guard application resumes. I've spoken to several Sea Scouts who joined the auxiliary because they see auxiliary service as an important plus when they apply to post-high school education. There are hundreds of auxiliary flotillas and divisions all over the country, and many would welcome the opportunity to work with you. This can be as informal as occasional visits to teach special topics such as navigation or radio communications, or making a more formal commitment to provide auxiliaries as adult leaders and trainers, and setting up underway training opportunities for Sea Scouts on Sea Scouts or auxiliary vessels. Building a partnership with one or more local auxiliary flotillas can involve holding joint vessel exam events, public affairs booths, or informal picnics. First, start by making contact. Ask your council commodore how to connect with your auxiliary liaison, or find a flotilla in your area. On cgaux.org, use Find a Flotilla under Join Us Now and contact the flotilla commander. Start with participating in boater safety classes or attending flotilla meetings to meet people and make contacts. Have the ship help with the flotilla's activities like vessel safety check days, public affairs booths, and picnics. See whether the flotilla is able to make an ongoing commitment to provide adult leadership, training, and exposure to the auxiliary. Now let's take a few moments to talk about how the auxiliary manages the Aux Scout program. At the local level, the council should appoint a council commodore, who is sometimes called a council Sea Scout committee chair, to serve as a key point of contact with the auxiliary. Sea Scout experience is helpful but not required. Commissioner background is useful, knowledgeable about starting and growing units. You can appoint a commodore even if you have no ships. Their role will be to start some. That's in fact how I got started in Sea Scouts. I started Sea Scouting from scratch in Northeast Illinois Council and organized 12 ships before I moved to Maryland. Reach out to the local Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla commander to determine if there's interest. If there is interest, guide the flotilla through the unit start process. The unit start process is similar to starting any other Sea Scout ship. The one exception is that the Coast Guard District's Director of Auxiliary must approve the chartering of the ship before BSA charter signing happens. How-to details and training videos are available online. Flotillas. At the local level, the auxiliary is organized into flotillas. The scope of flotillas varies in different parts of the country. In some areas, flotillas correspond to metropolitan areas. In others, to bodies of water, and in coastal areas where collaboration with the active duty Coast Guard is common, to Coast Guard stations. While flotillas operate independently and have a great deal of autonomy in choosing areas of focus, division level operations such as training exercises are common. And there is frequently a high degree of collaboration between flotillas within a division. There's also a high degree of collaboration between the auxiliary, even at the flotilla level, and the active duty Coast Guard. In some areas, the auxiliary flotilla may be the Coast Guard's only presence. Divisions and districts. Each flotilla reports to a division that in turn is a part of a district. Auxiliary districts correspond to Coast Guard districts, but are not always the same. There are 16 auxiliary districts. Aux Scout implementation varies from auxiliary district to district. The Coast Guard auxiliary districts often do not align with BSA Council service territories. There may be more than one auxiliary district in your area. Your Council Commodore should make a point to reach out to the Coast Guard Auxiliary Division and flotillas in your area. Ask for the Aux Scout staff officer. Some divisions lack Aux Scout staff, in which case the division commander can put you in touch with the right person. Establish positive working relationships with auxiliary leaders to ensure that auxiliaries are made to feel welcome and encouraged to help with local Sea Scout program. Another great resource is the Aux Scout map at tinyurl.com/Aux Scout map. This map shows where the Sea Scout ships and Coast Guard auxiliary flotillas are. It also provides address and web links for most. The Sea Scout ships on this map are teardrop-shaped marks. Oh, I see it's changed since I made this note, and flotillas are dots. Flotillas are dots, I think, and stars, no, dots are ships and stars are flotillas. The map is useful because it helps to identify where nearby flotillas and ships are so that they can partner together. Where there's a flotilla and no ship, the flotilla could consider starting one. Where there's a ship and no flotilla, maybe that's an opportunity to consider starting a flotilla. Now, here are some other areas where the Coast Guard Auxiliary can support scouting. Of course, the big one is boater safety classes, which would be particularly useful if, for example, a scout troop is planning on going to Florida Sea Base, or perhaps to do a paddling cruise. Paddlecraft training, vessel safety checks. All scout vessels should have a vessel safety check every year. They can provide merit badge counselors, not just for aquatics topics, but there are a number of other topics that fall broadly within the Coast Guard and auxiliaries areas of expertise. They provide congratulatory letters for Eagles, Quartermasters, and Summit Award recipients. The Coast Guard Auxiliary can provide an introduction to Coast Guard and maritime careers. AIM Week at the Coast Guard Academy, and special events like jamborees, National OA Conference, and Safeties at Sea. Here are some things to remember. Coast Guard auxiliaries are volunteers like we are. Treat them as valued partners whose help you'd like to have. They have other Coast Guard missions that they could be doing instead of supporting the Scouts. Flotillas are not required to charter ships. They are only encouraged to consider doing it. Our relationship is with the Coast Guard Auxiliary and not with active duty Coast Guard. Don't contact the Coast Guard directly, but go through the auxiliary. Always follow up promptly on all communications with the auxiliary. The auxiliary is guided by a standard operating procedure, or SOP, that defines what they can and cannot do. This is posted online and you should become familiar with it. Look for ways to make auxiliaries feel welcome and appreciated. Include them in ship and council program and social activities. Be patient. This is new for the auxiliary and they need your help to discover the best path to work with us. Sea Scout growth has been limited by a shortage of adult leaders with useful experience. This relationship provides access to hundreds of new potential charter partners across the country and thousands of skilled adults who are potential Scout leaders. The result, positive impact on membership and more scouting opportunities for youth in our communities. There are lots of web resources available for the auxiliary Sea Scout Youth Development Program. There are 2 main social media groups and 2 websites. The Aux Scout Facebook group is very active and involves both Sea Scout and auxiliary participation. It focuses on best practices for how Sea Scouts and auxiliary work together. Messages are screened before they're posted, so you'll only have to see messages that are on topic. Aux Scout also has a YouTube channel with well over 100 excellent training, public affairs, and program videos. And those videos can be very useful for instruction in ship meetings or flotilla meetings. Beyond those social media groups, please take the time to become very familiar with AUXScout.com, which is the successor to AUXB Wiki, and the Sea Scouts BSA website. AUXScout.com provides a vast amount of information on how the auxiliary works to support us. The Sea Scouts BSA website also provides resources for implementing the Aux Scout program. All these resources mentioned in this presentation are available online at this web address. And I'm specifically mentioning the tinyurl.com/AuxScoutLinks4. If you just copy down that address, that'll get you to everything else that we've mentioned in this slide presentation. So, thank you very much for your attention. I'll be happy to answer your questions now. So I think what I'll do is I'll close this, stop sharing. And